sitting on the seats, which are specially made and contoured for the individual drivers. And the graphic that is appearing before your amazed eyes is that of the Fédération Internationale Automobile. There it is, FIA Formula One World Championship, of which we are about to see round 13 in the 16-race World Championship, with Ayrton Senna leading Nigel Mansell by 18 points. 10 points for a win, 6 points for second place. For on the right of Monsieur Ballest there is Roland Brunschreider in the dark glasses. He is the FIA official who starts all the races and is race director. 3 points for fourth place, 2 for fifth and 1 for sixth position. And as I said before, it's essential from Nigel Mansell's point of view and the Williams team point of view for Mansell to finish ahead of Ayrton Senna. And the pressure really is on Mansell rather than Senna. I was talking to Senna yesterday and he was quite relaxed about his situation. He said, I'm going to play the race as it comes. Obviously I want to win, but if I have to settle for a place, I will do so. Hopefully it'll be ahead of Nigel Mansell, but he knows that he's got this 18-point cushion and that every point counts this year. The Portuguese Grand Prix is going to be over 71 laps of this 2.7-mile course, and if you look at the top of your picture, well, don't bother because they've changed it. Now you can see on the left Trevor Foster in the dark glasses. That is the team manager of the Jordan team, for whom Roberto Moreno is driving for his last Grand Prix in 1991, as far as I know, because Alessandro Zanardi, the Formula 3000 Italian driver who has done so well this season, will be taking Moreno's place in the Jordan team for the final Grand Prix in Japan and Spain, of course, next weekend, and the final one of the year in Australia at Adelaide on November the 3rd. So this is the quiet time. You will soon see the race is due to start at 2 o'clock, and you'll soon see everybody that is on the grid melting away. You can see the tyre pumping equipment and everything else being removed at the present moment. And the two popular men here, of course, are in Portugal are Ayrton Senna, because it's Portuguese that they speak in Brazil, and Nigel Mansell, who is very much the hero here. He's not Il Leone in Portugal as he is in Italy, but nevertheless everywhere, every time he appears, he gets a big cheer. So,
yes, when we passed that Union Jack there, the banner said "Come back, Mansell," which presumably means they're using last year's flag, because if you remember this time last year, Nigel Mansell was irrevocably retired at the Italian Grand Prix. He called a press conference specifically to confirm that he was definitely retired and never going to race again after the season. But anyway, happily, he's back and kicking up the door of the World Championship. And with an 18-point disadvantage, is by no means out of reach. If Senna finishes all 4 races to go, that means that would certainly mean that Nigel has very much an uphill struggle. He'll have to really score, but luck has a habit of evening things out, and if you hark back to the beginning of the season, Senna certainly had a great deal of luck early on. He won the first 4 races. In 3 of those he had serious mechanical problems and was lucky to finish at all. Conversely, Mansell was having a lot of bad luck with the new automatic gearbox in the Williams, and that's got sorted out. And so if luck does even out, it looks to me anyway that Nigel should be getting the good luck, and Senna maybe some of the bad luck catching up with him. So this championship is still very much wide open. Remember that the Williams Renault is the car of the moment. Mansell is in the best car, and certainly that is the best driver-car combination. And having said that, of course, Ayrton Senna has been, if anything, more brilliant recently when he's been driving a car that is no longer the best car than when he was cruising around and winning pretty easily in the McLaren when they were all conquering. And it certainly brought out the best in him. And I have to say that I don't think there's anybody else in this business who could be maintaining a lead with what has been for a lot of the season a very marked car disadvantage.
We've just had the intelligence that Ayrton Senna is going to be starting in the spare car. He took them both out in the warm-up and he was happier with the feel of the spare car. And there's good news too for followers of the very troubled Leighton House team, because Maurizio Gugelmin starts from an excellent 7th place on the grid with only the Ferraris, the Williams and the McLarens ahead of him, and his teammate Ivan Capelli starts from 9th on the grid. And I was telling you that Michael Schumacher, who's only in his 3rd Grand Prix, is again starting very well for his 2nd race for the Benetton team, 10th ahead of teammate Nelson Piquet. Stefano Modena, the Italian in the Tyrrell Honda, starts 12th ahead of Gianni Morbidelli. Andrea De Cesaris in the Jordan is in 14th place, and Martin Brundle starts 19th, but his teammate Mark Blundell starts from 15th position on the grid. Excellent. And the Yamaha V12 engine has been going extremely well here at Portugal. So now get ready, because 71 laps to go at the end of this parade lap, which is about to start with Riccardo Patrese. You now see his car for the first time on the right-hand side, with Roland Brucherider standing alongside Riccardo's front wheel. Roland waves the green flag and they lead away for the parade lap. 34 degrees it is here.
It certainly is, and quite frankly, I'm feeling pretty hot here in the commentary box, but I'm very glad I'm not in one of those cars. It really is not going to be a fun afternoon for the drivers. These are the conditions that they hate here most, because not only is it 34 degrees and hot, it is also pretty humid, and that ups the output level of the drivers. You sweat a lot more, you lose liquid faster in humid conditions, and really this is going to be a very hard race. The circuit doesn't give the driver any real rest. The longest straight is a relatively short one over the start-finish line, and they get no peace whatsoever, quite high G-forces, and mark my words, at the end of the race we'll see some pretty grey and drawn faces of the drivers and some very, very tired young men.
Yes, just before he got in the car, Nigel Mansell said to me, this is going to be one hell of a race, and I think he's right. And I'll remind you that he said the first 5 seconds should be terrific, because the first 5 seconds are going to govern who gets into turn 1 first. That's the 5th gear, 145 mile an hour, falling downhill right-hander. And although Portugal is not a circuit where pole position is as essential as many others, like, for instance, Monaco and Hungary, pole position is very much an advantage which Riccardo Patrese has. There is Mansell, Alain Prost, Jean Alesi, Maurizio Gugelmin. Jean Alesi had brake trouble in the half-hour warm-up this morning, so in the yellow-topped helmet is Alesi. Behind him, Pierluigi Martini, the little Italian who's maintaining his excellent qualifying form for the Portuguese Grand Prix. And out of turn 11, which is a 145 mile an hour, 180 degree corner, leads Riccardo Patrese. And the Italian is starting his 221st Grand Prix from pole position. Who says that he's lost motivation? Well, certainly nobody does. Behind him, and you'll see him come out from underneath his rear wing in a moment, Gerhard Berger. You can see the 2 McLarens in line astern. There's Berger peeling off. Senna behind Patrese. Nigel Mansell comes into line behind Gerhard Berger, and Prost and Alesi take up their positions. That's Prost in the Scarlet Ferrari just coming to a standstill. Martini, there's Michael Schumacher on the left, and Stefano Modena, and that is Patrese. Now, Patrese is starting from pole position for the 4th time this year, and he's yet to make a good start. Let's hope for his sake that it will be proved wrong this time. And you'll see a man with the green flag. There he is, going across the back of the grid to say that he is ready. The grid is formed. Watch the lights on the left. The red, and then less than 7 seconds later, the green. Excellent start by Patrese. Mansell in third position ahead of Senna, but Senna's got the inside line and he takes it as they go into turn one. Let's have a look to see what's happening. Mansell goes through to second place. Williams leads. Williams second. Patrese first. Mansell second. Berger third. And Dave Ferrari coming up there. And that was Jean Alesi ahead of his teammate Alain Prost, daringly trying to take Ayrton Senna but failing to do so. Up to turn 5 on lap 1.
Yes, and Mansell was quite right about the first 5 seconds being dominant. Here we see a replay of the start. Now, Mansell made a great start from the second row. He got the drop on Senna, and those are the people we're really watching. Moves across, Senna had to avoid him, but Senna goes to the inside and actually gets inside. And then I hope we've got another camera, because we didn't really see what happened in the corner, because Senna looked as if he had it. And no, well, we didn't follow it. But Senna certainly got inside Mansell and then lost a lot of ground, so there was a bit of pushing and shoving, and happily everybody emerged, and the two Williams' lead. There is Patrese pulling away already. Mansell in second place, and Senna down to fourth, but with Berger in front of him, and I'm sure Berger will make way as and when Ayrton Senna requests for that in order to have a go.
Patrese leads handsomely at the end of the first lap in the Williams Renault from Nigel Mansell, and Patrese has said, I will help Mansell to win the World Championship. Berger third, Senna fourth. Everybody is through at the end of the first lap. On the left is Emanuele Pirro taking one of the Minardis, that of Morbidelli. And Patrese then, even at the end of the first lap, was 1.8 seconds ahead of Nigel Mansell, and he will be trying to put, as ever, a cushion between himself and what is turning out to be already a battle for second place. Mansell second, Berger third, Senna fourth. In fifth position is Alesi. Sixth is Prost. Out of the race goes Johnny Herbert. Lap 1, Johnny Herbert.
And there's some flame at the back, and that took Herbert's car well on fire, and so that's the end of Herbert. And that was just a replay of what his problem was, and there he is, and that's very unfortunate. Johnny Herbert, much too short a race for him. However, back to the leaders, and Riccardo Patrese has said he'll help Mansell, but he has in fact said that through heavily gritted teeth, and I'm sure he will, but what he really wants to do, I think we'll see him pull away if he can first, and then he will studiedly wait for Mansell, because he's not happy about being number 2 to him, and there isn't a great deal of love lost between them, but come the end of the race he will certainly help. But at the moment he's being most impressive. The lead over 2.5 seconds, so Patrese really charging off into the distance. Mansell, I hope, is looking after his tyres and not worrying about Riccardo Patrese. He conversely doesn't have to race his own teammate. His concern is what's happening behind him. So Patrese can do the spectacular stuff, and Mansell can look after his business of scoring points to try and win the World Championship.
Yes, and you're watching Riccardo Patrese then on his third lap in this 71-lap race. Long way to go, and reliability is going to be the name of the game. The heat out there is very considerable, as I've said, and it's going to be enormously demanding. But we're expecting at least one tyre stop. All the Goodyear runners have started on the softest compound, the C compound, and we're expecting them to start coming in round about lap 25. The Pirelli runners, sadly, from their point of view, we're not expecting to be in it, but it's very much Riccardo Patrese at the moment on lap 3 out of 71. Mansell in the background. See, Senna's in fourth position, and the ideal result, of course, for Williams is the two of their men first and second, which would help them in the Constructors' Championship.
Yes, and the reason Mansell stretched the two McLarens out a little bit is there's a new fastest lap for Nigel Mansell, and he's reduced the gap to Riccardo Patrese, so he looks like he's played himself in carefully, doing absolutely the right thing, no hurry in the opening lap, and is now ready to start charging. There is a premium though in the early, probably the first dozen laps of the race, 12 to 15 laps, to look after the tyres on the full fuel load in order to get the best out of them later on up to the tyre stop. And the tyre stops we'd expect to start as soon as possibly lap 25 for people who are hoping to do one stop but want to make an early one tactically. So there's Nigel Mansell, and at the moment Berger still in pursuit, but as I said earlier, I'm sure when Senna wants to go by, he can get a message to Berger via the pits and back over the radio to make space for him.
Well, we've just had a bit of last-minute news, and that is that Ayrton Senna is taking a calculated risk. Unlike most of the other runners, he has got on the left-hand side of his car the harder B compound, on the right-hand side the softer C compound. That may pay dividends, it may not. We'll have to wait and see. Meantime, Riccardo Patrese with the fastest lap of 1 minute 21.19, of course well off the lap record of 1 minute 18.3 in this early stage of the race, led Nigel Mansell at the end of the fourth lap by 2.4 seconds. There is the Englishman behind him, Gerhard Berger third, Senna fourth, Alesi fifth, Prost is sixth, Martini is seventh, Capelli is eighth, Michael Schumacher has moved up a place to ninth, Mauricio Gugelmin is 10th, down one place has gone Nelson Piquet to 11th, and Stefano Modena in the Tyrrell Honda is 12th.
Well, talking of Senna's gamble by taking the harder compound for the left-hand side of the car, which does most of the work here, being a right-handed track, I like that as a theory, but I think maybe it wasn't right, because I think really if it was right it would be showing already, because the tyres will certainly have got up to a very high operating temperature straight away, and Senna, if anything, appears to be struggling to stay with the leading three.
Between Senna and Alesi in the Ferrari, who is in fifth position. Well, now there's Senna just clearing the corner. You'll see the Ferrari. We just saw the Ferrari as Nigel Mansell goes through into his sixth lap. We're almost up to 1/10 distance already, and we're expecting this race to run about 1 hour and 20 minutes. Berger going through. Now this is they start to climb a little here, round the left-hander, and then up to the tremendously fast turn 5, just a bit of a kink in the circuit, fifth gear, 155 miles an hour. And they build up to 170 miles an hour where they are now, into the third gear, 70 miles an hour on the approaches, turn 6, and you're watching Gerhard Berger in third position, chasing Nigel Mansell. That was Riccardo Patrese, the leader, and they are on their way down to turn 7, the right-hander. This is it, climbing again, fourth gear, 120 miles an hour, building to 140 into turn 8. Now a bit of a kink to the right, down into second gear, left up into third, that's turn 10. Now into that 180-degree right-hander at 145 miles an hour with the speed building. They come out of it at 160 miles an hour. They being Patrese crossing the line first. Mansell second, this man number 2, Gerhard Berger third. In the background in the yellow helmet, Ayrton Senna in an unaccustomed fourth position. And at the present moment, Ayrton Senna well down by his standards, with Alesi and Prost in the Ferraris not very far behind him. And it bears repeating that with at least one tyre stop forecast in this race, it might, in the end analysis, be won by the mechanics who change the wheels and tyres just as much as the drivers. We've had some incredibly fast tyre stops recently, in just over 4 seconds to change all 4 wheels and tyres. A normal one is about 7 seconds. There's Mansell.
Yes, so the new fastest lap for Nigel Mansell there on that last lap. The gap's hovering around just over between 2.5 and 3 seconds with Patrese, and I'm sure that's very comfortable for Mansell, comfortable for Patrese. That's a good distance to keep apart. Mansell doesn't want to be closer than that to his teammate at the moment, because that risks hurting his tyres as he gets into the turbulence and the car in front of his car slides more. So that's good, sensible driving. the pressure now is really on Gerhard Berger from the point of view of being a McLaren team member, because Senna is the man they're trying to help towards yet another World Championship, and Berger, because Senna's choice of tires at the moment is not working for him, it puts a lot of pressure on Berger to stay with the Williams, to track them, harry them and worry them.
You just saw that caption, Nigel Mansell, the fastest lap of the race, sitting comfortably behind his teammates. Red 5, Nigel Mansell, 1 minute 20.36, compared with the lap record of 1 minute 18.3. And you can see too the heat haze around this circuit. And I remind you that the drivers are wearing very heavy Nomex long johns, long sleeve undershirts, heavy socks, racing boots, 3-layer racing overalls, balaclava helmet, heavy gloves, and a crash helmet. They've got those 750 horsepower engines racing at about 13,000 RPM behind them. It's 34 degrees outside the car, and it will be massively hot inside it. So Riccardo Patrese on lap 9 in this 71 lap race leads Nigel Mansell by a decreased margin of 1.8 seconds, but as James has said, I'm quite sure that, as Mansell said yesterday, this is a tactical situation. Riccardo's doing everything that's expected of him, and Nigel Mansell can sit confidently there, knowing from his mirrors, from his pit signals and from his pits-to-car radio exactly what the situation is in the race, particularly with relation to Ayrton Senna, who is well back now, 4th position, but Alesi in 5th position is 4 seconds behind the McLaren of Ayrton Senna. Prost is still 5th, Martini in the Minardi Ferrari is 7th, Ivan Capelli is still 8th, Schumacher 9th, Gugelmin 10th, Piquet 11th, Andrea De Cesaris in the Jordan is in 12th position, Mark Blundell is 17th, Martin Brundle is 18th. Johnny Herbert is out of the race on lap 1 in the Lotus on his return to Grand Prix racing. Completion of lap 9. Patrese, Mansell, Berger, now they go round that right-hander there at some 150 miles an hour, still dropping downhill into turn 2. This is a 150 mile an hour bend. Pin sharp in their accuracy. And Mansell is leading Berger by 2.5 seconds. Berger is leading Senna by 3.8 seconds. The race thus far is going exactly the way Williams would want it to go and Renault would want it to go. I pay particular homage to Renault, whose V10 engine has really given Honda, who have had dominance in Grand Prix racing for so long, something to think about this season. With victories for Patrese in Mexico, Mansell in France, Britain and Germany, Mansell again in Italy, and the Renault powered cars are leading at the present moment. With a very happy and confident Bernard Dudo, their chief engineer, looking at the telemetry on the monitors in the Williams pits, which tell him exactly what is happening with those V10 engines.
Yes, and certainly a big contribution to the improvements in the performance of the Renault engines has come from Elf with their fuel, but as have all the fuel companies. If anything, the biggest quantum leaps forward in performance this year have come from exotic fuels that are now going into the car. Shell have done their bit certainly with for Honda with the Honda engine in McLaren, and of course Agip with Ferrari were the forerunners of the really hot jungle juice they use for qualifying. So now, looking at the overall position in the race, Ayrton Senna is falling back. He's some 4 seconds behind teammate Berger. And I have to say, although I thought it was an intelligent choice of tyre and a good gamble potentially, I feel that in his position it was wrong anyway tactically to do anything different from what the two Williams Renaults were doing, because their job, McLaren's job tactically with Senna surely is to cover every move of the Williams team. And I think this may be causing a lot of head scratching right now in the McLaren pit. Quite sure they'll send Senna out on C's all round when they change him, but they've got a big dilemma as to whether they want to bring him in early and get him onto something good then, or whether they want to bring him in late, soldier on with what he's got, which may prove to be relatively better the longer the race goes on, and then give him a set of C's later on to have a better performance from them in a shorter second half of the race. It's I'm quite sure a situation going on down the McLaren pit of a lot of head scratching, and there is Ayrton Senna, because I'm quite sure, well, his job really is only to finish in front of Mansell, but that looks like a mighty tall order in this situation. Of course he'll be able to ask Gerhard Berger towards the end of the race to drop back, to let him through, to keep close to Mansell, but he won't want Patrese between them, because Williams 1-2, the best result Ayrton could have is third place, and of course that means he loses 6 points to Nigel Mansell, and that really would bring the World Championship alight for the last 3 races.
And meantime, up front, Riccardo Patrese has really pulled the bung out. We have just had the first lap in under 1 minute 20 seconds, which Mansell has now handsomely beaten. Mansell's 12th lap was 1 minute 19.4, which is just a second off the lap record in this early stage of the race. Incidentally, for those of you who are interested in this sort of thing, the pole position time here of Riccardo Patrese, 1 minute 13.001, was just half a second faster than Mansell's Ferrari pole position time last year. Gives you an example, an indication of the comparative performance of the cars, and you can see that Mansell is now edging up on Riccardo Patrese. I am quite sure in my mind that there's not going to be any question of a hammer and tongs fight for the lead between these two, because the World Championship matters but so much to Nigel Mansell and for the constructors to the Williams team, and that is Mark Blundell out of the race in his Brabham Yamaha. He's obviously spun off, and that was on lap 13. So both the retirements so far are British, Johnny Herbert and Mark Blundell.
Yes, and it looks as if he may be, well, maybe we can see what happens, but he drops a couple of paces rather than... yes, there's a breakage on the car, so that was clearly a suspension failure for Mark Blundell. Very unfortunate, rather frightening for him. There's that right rear wheel came totally adrift, and he had, as I say, he'd mysteriously lost some places a couple of laps ago, so maybe there was already a fault in the car. Now, Mansell tracking his teammate, Riccardo Patrese. I'm wondering if he wants to go past before the tyre stop, or whether he'll leave it till then and hope that he can make the pass, as it were, during the pit stop situation by getting a quicker one in than Riccardo to save the fight. And there is Mark Blundell, and probably got a bit of a fright, but I'm sure he's all right now, because the gravel pit, yes, he looked very relaxed about it. And of course, racing drivers don't mind problems like that, because that wasn't his fault. All you can do in this business is say whether you're doing a good job, and if the car lets you down, that isn't your problem.
But nevertheless, very, very unsettling and sadly very significant, because Martin Brundle had his Brabham right rear suspension collapse yesterday at colossal speed in practice, and that was the 4th time that Martin Brundle had it happen this year. So there would appear to be a design weakness in the Brabham, and of course, to be driving a car around a corner at 150 miles an hour, not at all sure about whether the suspension is going to stay in one piece, is, to put it mildly, a pretty worrying situation. But no worries at the moment for number 6 on lap 15, Riccardo Patrese, leading the Portuguese Grand Prix from Nigel Mansell by 1.5 seconds, with Gerhard Berger now 6 seconds falling back in the McLaren behind Mansell, and Senna too is falling back. He's 3 seconds behind Berger.
Yes.
But
I just detect the two Williamses have slowed down very slightly. By those blistering laps in the 19s have now stopped, and Patrese is backed off by about a second a lap in his last two laps. Now, we will have to watch and see whether he's just taking a breather or whether actually the Williamses have used the best of their tyres now and are now hanging on up to the tyre stop stage. If that's the case, then they've got quite a ways to go, and Senna's harder compound could just start to bring him back towards them.
That's another lap completed, and into the pits comes JJ Leto in the Dallara Judd. Into the pits or out of the race? Well, from the leisurely way that everybody's acting, that's the third, indeed it is. JJ Leto had problems in the warm-up this morning, and he's obviously out of the race on lap 16. So that's Herbert out, Blundell out with that collapsed suspension, JJ Leto out, and the Finnish driver has signed again for Dallara next year, who will be using Ferrari engines. But here are the Renault men. Mansell, number 5, second place, lap 16, and the race order is Patrese leading Mansell by the distance that you can see. Mansell is 6 seconds ahead of Berger, who is 3 seconds ahead of Senna 4, who is 8 seconds ahead of Alesi 5th, who has got Alain Prost immediately behind him in 6th position. Martini is in 7th place, that's Gerhard Berger in his pit, JJ Leto in his pit. Martini in 7th place, Capelli in 8th position, Michael Schumacher in the Benetton is 9th, Gugelmin is 10th, so both the Leighton House cars are in the top 10. Nelson Piquet is in 11th place in the second Benetton, Andrea De Cesaris is in 12th position, and Riccardo Patrese has completed his 16th lap.
Well, looks like the Williamses are having a breather. New fastest lap for Nigel Mansell, and Riccardo Patrese has also speeded up ahead of him, and now they're really extending their lead, and it's beginning to look like a very comfortable race for Williams Renault. The gap to Berger is 7.7 seconds from Mansell, that is, and a further 3.3 seconds, so 10 seconds back to Senna from Nigel Mansell. And this is getting to the point almost where, with maybe another 12, 13, 14 laps to go before pit stops, that the Williams Renaults could well have a big enough lead that they can stop and still get out ahead of the McLarens. And that just underlines the immense current superiority of the Williams chassis, because they were unable to do this to the McLaren to Senna at Monza, although their superiority is still told. In the end, we saw there that the Honda engine was able to do its job and fend off the Williams Renaults on the long straights of Monza without any undue problems, but it wasn't a match around the corners in the end, and here with a lot more corners it seems to be a real struggle for the McLaren team. There's Gerhard Berger coming by in third place, and there's an awful long gap now. It's 8.4 seconds. He's falling back, and still, despite the fact that that was Berger's fastest lap of the race, his personal fastest lap, and he's still losing ground quite fast now to the Williams Renaults.
A lot of people, of course, will say that this race position and situation at the moment is no surprise to them. They expected the Williams to do well, but I make no bones about it. I didn't expect the race to be as stretched out as it is, because when McLaren put that remedial program in hand after the Canadian Grand Prix, prior to Nigel Mansell winning 3 races in a row, we expected the Williams to dominate, but then McLaren came back so brilliantly in Hungary and Belgium, where Senna won, before Mansell retook the leadership in racing in the Italian Grand Prix. And now, to my surprise, Gerhard Berger, and that in the pits is Emanuele Pirro in the second of the Dallara Judd, coming in for a tyre stop, 8 seconds. But I was saying, Mansell is now 8.5 seconds ahead, and he looks as though he's in the lead. Nigel Mansell has taken the lead. We missed it, the producer missed it, but he's out first.
Yes, and in fact, I think that Riccardo Patrese may be in trouble, or else he just backed off, but he certainly slowed up to let Mansell through. as Pirro plonks himself between them, but he's out of the way quite rightly. That's good driving by Pirro. He didn't really hold them up. And here we see again Mansell making his overtaking manoeuvre, and either Patrese had some gearbox sort of trouble out of the last corner, then, or else I think more likely he just was probably asked by the pit and he's let Mansell go. And Mansell certainly looks ready to go. He was pressing him, didn't want to get too close because of the car situation, but I think we'll see Mansell really motor now, for a few laps anyway, to put enough daylight between him and the McLaren. So, as I say, he has the luxury, potentially, of being able to get into the pit, change his tyres, and still get out ahead of them on a fresh set.
38-year-old Nigel Mansell from Port Erin in the Isle of Man, soon to be a resident of Florida, leads the Portuguese Grand Prix on lap 19. And look, you cannot even see a McLaren in the background as Riccardo Patrese exits turn 11. Well, you did see one then, and it's still Gerhard Berger. And Mansell has gone round in 1 minute 21.5, and Gerhard Berger is now 7 seconds behind Riccardo Patrese. And Ayrton Senna still 3.5 seconds behind Berger. Not good news for the Brazilian. He does admittedly know that on call, as it were, Gerhard Berger will move over and let him through into third position in the championship. But that would be extremely bad news for Ayrton Senna, because the World Championship gap would have narrowed by 6 points, assuming they finish where they are now. And there is a long, long way to go. Lap 20. We're not even 1/3 of the distance yet in this 71-lap race. The Williams certainly looking good. But I keep on thinking, at the back of my mind, back to the press conference that Ayrton Senna gave at Phoenix before the season had even begun, and the very perceptive, experienced Brazilian said the thing that is going to decide the World Championship this year is reliability. Well, he was lucky for the first 4 races, as James has said. He was lucky to finish them, but he won them all. And that is Pirro out of the race. He's out of the race because if he's push-started, he will be disqualified. So lap 21, the 4th retirement, Johnny Herbert, Mark Blundell, J.J. Leito and Emanuele Pirro, both the Dallara judges out of the Portuguese Grand Prix, led by Nigel Mansell, there 1.3 seconds ahead of Riccardo Patrese. Berger 3rd, Senna 4th, Alesi 5th, Prost 6th, Martini 7th, Ivan Capelli 8th, Schumacher still 9th, Gugelmin 10th, so both the Leighton House cars still in the top 10. Nelson Piquet in the 2nd, Benetton is 11th, Andrea De Cesaris is 12th, Gianni Morbidelli is in 13th place, then it's Modena 14th, Moreno 15th, Comas 16th, Thierry Boutsen is in 17th place, and Mansell has lapped everybody up to Thierry Boutsen, who is 17th.
And Mansell leads Senna, which is the man he's really interested in, by some 11.5 seconds, just under 11.5 seconds. Oh, there we are, 11.3.
This, of course, is very good for the World Championship. It may not be so good for Senna and McLaren at the moment, with a long way still to go. But everybody naturally hopes that the World Championship is going right down to the last race of the year in Australia on November the 3rd. And if Mansell can keep it up, there's every likelihood that it will do so. And you remember that Nigel Mansell lost the World Championship in Adelaide when he had that monumental left rear tyre burst, which took him out of the Jack Brabham straight there at some 200 miles an hour. But Mansell on his Goodyear Cs is going well. Riccardo Patrese driving steadily round behind him on lap 22. Gerhard Berger is dropping back all the time. Now, are you surprised, James, that the McLarens, Berger 7.7 seconds behind Patrese and Senna another 2 seconds behind Berger, are not going that well here?
No, I'm not actually, Murray. It was no surprise to me. That is really very much the performance sort of difference on a circuit where the chassis can dominate and the engine performance isn't so critical that we've seen for some time between the Williamses and the McLarens. The only thing that could have precluded that was if McLarens had made a better job of the start. And Mansell made a fabulous start from the second row, got the drop on Senna. Senna did what he could. He fought to get inside him, but in fact, that if anything, made matters worse, because in sticking his neck out, he then had to back off quite a lot. Mansell emerged in second place, and Senna actually managed to end up behind teammate Gerhard Berger. So it was not a good first corner for McLaren, and once they were behind Williams-Renault, the Williams-Renaults were always going to go away from them. The car is undoubtedly the chassis of 1991. It's infinitely superior to anything else. McLaren are probably next up. They are very much of a muchness for power and engine performance, but as I say, this underlines the superiority, and the fact that both Williams drivers can drive away from Ayrton Senna does say it all, really.
Now, no one man designs a Grand Prix car these days. It's down to a lot of people who specialise in aerodynamics, in suspension and all the other requirements. But two men in particular are responsible for the Williams, as you see Berger going through to complete his 23rd lap in third position, and Ayrton Senna closing up behind him. Those two men who are responsible for the Williams design are, of course, Patrick Head, who is the chief designer, chief engineer, and very much the top technical man at Williams, and Adrian Newey, who is their brilliant aerodynamicist, and the two of them have produced an absolutely magnificent chassis. Senna is definitely starting to edge up on Berger.
Yes, and he's as close to Berger now as he will really get without his aerodynamics being affected, and I would think it's very likely that Senna will radio to the pit, ask them to radio, because they can't talk car to car normally, and ask them to ask Berger to step aside and let him go, because he will only be held up. It will be hard work trying to pass because of the turbulence, and it will be expedient from Senna's point of view if he can ask Berger just to let him go, as Patrese did for Mansell. So we don't often see teammates working together because they don't often have to in this business, because these races are sprints, basically. But here, with the World Championship at stake, we're seeing it from both the Williams and the McLaren team. And there's a couple of back markers between them. And there is Senna. The gap about 11 seconds to Nigel Mansell. 11.2 seconds still. It's going up and down a bit with the traffic. So Senna is holding Mansell, but of course being 11 seconds behind and holding is not a lot of help to him. Mansell probably is now driving very much to that gap, and I suspect has some comfort out there and a fair bit in hand.
And the two McLarens are closing up on Mika Häkkinen, the 22-year-old Finnish driver in the Lotus, who is 23rd. And you can tell how humid it is here at Estoril, or near Estoril, within sight of the Sierra de Sintra, the Sintra Mountains, and that is Andrea de Cesaris in the Jordan with obviously a problem. Something happening in the cockpit because the tyres had been changed. I was saying, you see how humid it is, because even in this 34-degree heat, you can see a bit of a vapor trail from the rear wing as they go into that 155 mile an hour turn 5. And on lap 25 in this 71-lap Portuguese Grand Prix, as Nakajima and Häkkinen chasing Aguri Suzuki are being caught, about to be lapped by Berger and Senna. It's still Mansell, Patrese, Berger, Senna.
Yes, and Berger is now holding Senna up. There's no doubt about that. That was a slower lap for Senna. He's in the turbulence for Berger, and he will really want Berger to get out of the way, because he's doing quite a good job. Senna's tyres, the tyre choice that didn't look good for the first 20 laps of the race, and certainly I'm sure wasn't the right one, because they're getting quite near time to change tyres, but it is coming good at this stage, albeit rather late. And Berger may not be aware that Senna has now got into the turbulence and is actually slowing down. There are the back markers. There's Berger, there's Senna.
And in the pits, one of the Jordans, I can't see which one it is, it's Piquet. Nelson Piquet, who was in 11th position as Benetton, Nelson Piquet in the Benetton. And he was in, as I was saying, 11th position. And I wouldn't mind having a look at the Ferraris, Mr. Producer, because 5th and 6th are Alesi and Prost, and that's the closest that we've got to a race at the present moment in terms of cars being close to each other, because Alesi is about 0.8 of a second behind Alain Prost as Gerhard Berger laps Eric Comas in the Ligier with the Lamborghini engine, and Ayrton Senna does the same thing. We're on lap 27.
Yes, and we see the McLaren pits getting ready for a tire stop. And it may be, therefore, that Senna will come in first, and therefore they won't need for him to pass Berger right now. And a good time for Senna to come in with an increasing amount of traffic around. And the news is actually that it's going to be Berger they're going to put coming in first, as I understand it.
Coming up to there's Häkkinen. So, Berger third, Senna fourth. There are the McLaren mechanics, and that is a hydraulic lift to raise the front of the car that the mechanic is holding there. And you can expect to see Gerhard Berger peel off in the pit lane. Ayrton Senna go up into third position, and in the pits there, number 4 is Stefano Modena in the Tyrrell Honda. Out he goes. He was 13th when he came in. He will have lost places, of course. And there it is, into the pits goes Berger, up to third position goes Ayrton Senna. Here is the Austrian. I wonder if they'll get under 5 seconds. It would be a superlative stop if they did. No, they haven't. 7.34. Gerhard Berger, and that was on lap 28. Which was rather longer than we had expected. The technicians told us that car stops would start round about lap 25. Well, I suppose they did, but Berger was out a bit later than we expected, or rather in a bit later than we expected. And you see Nigel Mansell leading in Portugal, lap 28. Having already won this year, France, Britain, Germany, Italy, and Michael Schumacher into the pits in the Benetton for another set of Pirelli tyres from 11th position. He was 5 seconds ahead of Roberto Moreno, the man whose place he took in the Benetton team at the last Grand Prix in Italy. And we're on lap 29 now. Mansell leads, Patrese second. Ayrton Senna is coming into the pits for tyres. You can't see him. I can.
Yes, and there we are. And Senna, let's have a look at this if they've got a bit of practice. And that is quick. Just over 5 seconds. Williams, of course, have a big cushion. They won't need to rush their tyre stop. It's vital to keep cool during a tyre stop, although and that's one of the things that's so impressive. You don't see anybody panicking or hurrying, and yet they change 4 wheels and tyres in 5 seconds and a fraction. That really is quite something, especially when you consider that everything they're handling is pretty close to red hot. And there goes the Nathan Hausdorff, and that wasn't quite so sufficient work.
It was Ivan Capelli. Now, it's going to be more than interesting at the end of this lap to see where Ayrton Senna is in relation to Jean Alesi and Alain Prost. You will soon see if the producer stays with the shot he's got now, because there's Mansell going through in the lead at the completion of his 29th lap, with Riccardo Patrese in second place. Now, I'm waiting for the 3rd and 4th then to come through, expecting them to be the 2 Ferraris. As you watch Riccardo Patrese, the seconds are ticking by, and they're still not in sight. So that'll give you an indication of how big the gap is between the Williams and it's Jean Alesi up into third position, 24 seconds now behind Riccardo Patrese, which of course is going to make things even harder for Senna because now Prost is ahead of him as well.
And Prost has gone for the pits, that's why he didn't come round with the lazy, and that looked like a slow getaway by Alain Prost off the jack, but quite a quick change if that caption on the stopwatch was to be believed. And there is Mansell, leading his teammate. Patrese is sticking right with him. And in fact, Mansell probably won't be thanking Patrese. He was wasn't very happy with Patrese after the Italian Grand Prix when Patrese was dancing around behind him as Mansell goes for his tyre stop. So, critical time, no hurry for the Williams team, just essential to have no errors, nothing stuck on, and just get him turned round. 10 seconds would do nicely. There is not a hurry on this one. And that's absolutely fine. Very professional stop by the Williams team as we get all three abreast at the end of the straight. And big battle by the back markers there.
Suzuki, Häkkinen and Comas. And that's Mansell stopped. Nigel Mansell stopped in the pit lane. I don't know what's happened. I've got the faintest idea. All I can tell you is he's stationary, and that means that Patrese is back in the lead.
It looks almost as if he's hit the other side of the pit road. Or something like that. What has happened? And he looks absolutely gutted. And that is most extraordinary. We didn't see that. Oh, and he's lost a wheel. Apparently Mansell, so they didn't. And that, I did say 10 seconds would do. Do not make any mistakes. And it sounds like that is terribly bad luck for Nigel Mansell, but it's a mistake by the Williams team. Of that, there can be very little doubt. If the wheel was not seated properly or something like that, bit of wheel spin, and it's undone itself, and they're going to try and work on the car. But I fear that's going to be all too late, and Nigel Mansell, once again, a shot for the World Championship seems to be slipping away.
I remember that shot in Adelaide where Mansell went out because there was some scaffolding in the foreground. It looked to me as though he was rejoining there, but well down, of course. And this will be elation time for Ayrton Senna. Riccardo Patrese is now on his 32nd lap in the lead. Don't forget that Ayrton Senna has changed tyres and wheels. He's in third position, or was behind Alesi, because there is Alesi in the pits on lap 32.
Yes, and Senna, that moves Senna up into second place with a clear road in front of him. Patrese hasn't yet been for his stop, but Patrese is some 33 seconds ahead, so he really could get in and out of the pits with still a comfortable lead.
Well, dreadful for Mansell. I can't find the words to explain how mortified whoever was responsible for whatever happened must be, and I don't know, but I can only presume that the nut wasn't done up tightly enough, or it cross-threaded, couldn't have cross-threaded, otherwise they wouldn't have been able to get the wheel on. But anyway, on lap 32, out of 71, Patrese is leading. Senna is now in second place. Alesi had a terrible pit stop, 16.6 seconds. Berger is third, Prost is fourth, and Morbidelli is fifth ahead of Martini.
And we've just heard from the pit that not only did Mansell have all that problem, but his car was pushed backwards very slightly in the pit road. And of course, we know that's illegal because we remember the problem with the reverse in this very pit road in his Ferrari days. But Mansell did signal the marshal away. It was a marshal who was pushing, not a team member. And I think probably, certainly if I was the Williams team, if the stewards do want to criticise that and take some action, one would have to say that it was beyond his control. It was nothing to do with the team, and he didn't ask to be pushed, and he did try and stop it. So, and I've no doubt he hit the brake pedal as soon as that happened. So, with a bit of luck, they won't compound the penalty by disqualifying him as well. And Mansell can still score points in this race. He's got the Williams Renault, still a quick car. So, and that looks like Patrese coming into me in the in the distance. It is indeed, or is that Mansell? No, it's Patrese. Patrese coming in for his routine stop.
And Nigel Mansell was in 12th position when he rejoined a lap adrift. Of course, we can expect to see some pretty spirited driving, to put it mildly, if Mansell's car is okay. Now, Patrese goes out in 8.6 seconds. Williams supporters could still see a victory. And there is Mansell rejoining and going through, unlapping himself. So Mansell and the car looks good. And if anybody is capable of fighting back, it is Nigel Mansell, who thrives on adversity. He's got plenty of that at the moment. It is lap 34 in Portugal. Patrese leads Senna by a commanding 28 seconds, with Berger right behind the Brazilian, and he'll stay there, of course, unless Senna has trouble. Alain Prost is in 4th position in the Ferrari. In 5th place, it is Jean Alesi. 6th is Morbidelli, and there's the replay of Nigel Mansell going into turn 1.
Yes, and it was as well that Patrese made space for him there, but not a lot, because in his current mood, and who can blame him, there's no way Mansell was going to back off there. Had Patrese moved over another 2 feet, there certainly would have been contact between the two Williamses. And I'm not too sure how well Patrese had clocked Mansell's arrival at huge speed alongside him. But all was well. And Mansell now in a position to show us a real charge.
And I've got some pretty grim news for Mansell followers. That 12th position I gave you was the way things were at the end of the lap when Mansell was stationary. He's actually down to 16th position at the present moment. And he's got an enormous amount to do. Riccardo Patrese leading then, 10 seconds ahead of Senna after the tyre stop.
Yes, well, Mansell certainly set about it all right, because he just had a new fastest lap of the race. And that, I think, was even with a bit of traffic around.
Just under 1 second off the lap record as you look at Gerhard Berger going through and taking Ayrton Senna. And moving up, therefore, into 2nd place, which mystifies me a bit. Does this mean that Ayrton Senna has got a problem? Oh, my goodness, it's all happening here in Portugal.
Yes, well, I think even if it doesn't, if Berger is quicker, he can go ahead. It's not a bad tactic to go ahead and harry Patrese, do what he can to join battle with the Williamses. Because remember that he can always drop back at the end and let Senna by if the situation demands it. So no harm in that, and it may well be that Senna feels that his car is not working as well as he would like, and therefore he wants Berger ahead to go and attack Riccardo Patrese to try and make a mistake or pressure him into pushing his car too hard or whatever in order to clear the way. So the gap now just under 10 seconds from Patrese to Berger, or around 10 seconds, and we'll watch that and see if the McLarens can stay. Fastest lap, another new fastest lap for Mansell. That's another one since I reported just a few seconds ago, and under 1 minute 19 seconds now.
And Gerhard Berger has got absolutely nothing to lose and everything to gain. He could get ahead of Riccardo Patrese if he keeps going the way he is going now. He's not going to win in Portugal if Senna is running, because Berger will have to give way to him, defer to his teammate because of the World Championship situation. But that is Riccardo Patrese. He's on his 36th lap. He's coming up now behind Roberto Moreno, the Brazilian, for his second and I think last drive in the Jordan. He's in 14th position, Moreno. So Patrese, who is leading, having won in Mexico. Now, he will want to get past Roberto Moreno. Is the Brazilian going to let him through? Roberto Moreno, great friend of Ayrton Senna, who was influential in Moreno getting the drive in the Jordan team in preference to Derek Warwick, who so many people were hoping to see back in Formula One Grand Prix racing here. And now the fastest man on the course with a lap in 1 minute 18.8. That's half a second outside the lap record is Gerhard Berger. The gap is coming down. Patrese leading by 8.8 seconds now. Senna very happy in third position, knowing that Berger is pushing Patrese very hard indeed. Fourth and fifth, the two Ferraris, Prost and Alesi, 10 seconds behind Ayrton Senna. And Pierluigi Martini in the points for the first time for the Minardi team for an awful long time. Ivan Capelli, 7th in the Leighton House. Piquet is 8th in the Benetton. 9th is De Cesaris in the Jordan. 10th is Michael Schumacher in the second Benetton. And Gugelmin is in 11th place. Modena is in 12th position. 13th is Gianni Morbidelli. And Mansell is searing through the field. And he's in 14th place.
Yes, and that looks like Nelson Piquet's Benetton. And Piquet is following Capelli by a little bit. And now another new fastest lap for Mansell. So the race is really hotting up to speed with the lead drivers on fresh tyres, and Berger has got some sort of a problem. He's into the pits, and the car has stopped. The clock's still running, so Berger with a problem, and that was great. That's a big blow for the McLaren team.
Yes, that was Gerhard Berger's second tyre stop, and he now retires. So maybe McLaren have got an Achilles heel, and that means, of course, that Senna now retakes that second position by default. He is 11 seconds behind Riccardo Patrese. This is lap 38. Patrese leads, Senna second, Prost is up to third, Alesi is fourth, Martini fifth, Capelli is in the points in sixth position, Piquet seventh, De Cesaris eighth, and Michael Schumacher ninth. And we're riding with Nelson Piquet in eighth position.
Yes, and now just to have a quick, quiet review of the situation, because the World Championship is what dominates our thinking today, and the fact of the matter is that Ayrton Senna in second place, and remember his task is to cover Nigel Mansell and be sure to beat him, and he's very strong after that awful shame that Mansell had when the rear wheel fell off in the pit, and he's now about just over a minute ahead of Mansell, Senna, so from that point of view he's very comfortable. He's also well ahead of Prost in second place, so things seem to be falling in the right direction at the moment for Senna. But remember, a lot can change even during these races. It only needs Berger, we thought, was going marvellously well just now, and there they are working on Berger's car, but it seems they've undressed it completely, and I really don't think he's going to play any serious part in this race any further. So Patrese and Senna pretty much holding station at the moment, and Senna, of course, would always like to win, and I'm sure he will pressure Patrese as hard as he can, but he won't want to take any risks at all on the track.
And you saw Mansell go through. He's almost a lap behind Patrese, although he's just ahead of him on the track. There is Ayrton Senna about to lap Eric Comas, the French driver in the Ligier Lamborghini, into turn one. And I'm mindful of Ayrton Senna saying he was going to drive the race as it came. Of course, he wanted to win, but a place would do, because a place represents points, and if that place was ahead of Nigel Mansell, irrespective of what their positions were, he, Senna, would be well pleased. So, to the extent that he can luxuriate in thinking at the present moment about anything other than the tactics of the race, he will be well pleased. Ayrton Senna in second position on a potential 6 points, and Prost is out of the race from third position to join all the other retirements. So you can, and a burst of fire extinguisher powder. So this, I reckon, as Gerhard Berger gets out of his car and abandons the race, that it's this 34-degree heat and the demands of this very tricky circuit that are causing the problems with the cars. Johnny Herbert was out very early in the race, to be followed by Blundell, Leto, Pirot, Gerhard Berger, and now Alain Prost. but the significant thing to me is that it's the top and especially well-prepared cars that are starting to go out now. We are on lap 40.
Yes, and that is in keeping with the power race we've had and the in this business, because McLaren certainly have been going flat out on what they call optimizing the performance of the car, which certainly is a laudable thing to do, but basically what it also means, another way of describing it, might be making it more and more marginal. And of course, when we get 34-degree heat, that is exceptionally hot, even by Grand Prix standards, where we tend to follow the sun around the world. These cars aren't used to running in quite this heat, and the McLarens, we know, are fairly marginal. Now, here's a pic. This is a replay of Prost. Fairly straightforward blow-up. I think he'd have blown up somewhere down the previous straight, and he was just into parking it neatly. So, eyes on Ayrton Senna, and Senna is some 12 seconds, or I tell a lie, nearly 14 seconds behind Patrese now. A big, big gap to Jean Alesi, to some half a minute from Senna. So Patrese and Senna way out on their own. Nigel Mansell is in somewhere around 12th place now, still a long, long way back.
Oh, he's going through the field. Nigel Mansell is up to 9th as I talk to you. And Gerhard Berger's retirement was caused by a misfire caused by a broken valve. That's not something we expect from Honda. The V12 took a long time to get onto race pace at the beginning of the season, and Senna made no secret of the fact that he would have preferred to have the Honda V10, but he's got the V12 and they've got it really going now. And Riccardo Patrese leads on lap 41, this man second, Ayrton Senna. 13.7 seconds behind Riccardo Patrese, with Jean Alesi now in third position in the Ferrari, Gerhard Berger on the left, and that is Senna coming up to lap Roberto Moreno, who you remember me telling you is in 13th position. And on lap 42, the race order is Patrese leading Senna, that you are watching at the moment, by just under 13 seconds. Senna is an enormous 33 seconds ahead of Alesi's Ferrari, who is only 1 second ahead of Pierluigi Martini's Minardi Ferrari in 4th place. Capelli is just a couple of seconds in 5th position behind Martini, and in 6th position it is Nelson Piquet in the points ahead of De Cesaris 7th, Schumacher 8th. Nigel Mansell is in 9th position, 14 seconds behind De Cesaris. But I'll stick my neck out and say it's not going to be very much longer before Mansell is up into the points.
That's right. He is, of course, a long, long way behind Senna, and he has no chance of catching Senna if both cars run healthily to the end. However, he can catch and pass a lot of other people. He's still over a minute behind Senna. They're pretty much holding station, because although Mansell can lap a bit quicker when he's on his own, and that looks like a Leighton House just... Well, oh, it's a Jordan. Difficult to tell looking into the sun. Yes,
I was afraid you were going to do that. I thought it was Suzuki, but we'll soon know. And now Nelson Piquet stops again, so that's the second set of tyres that Nelson Piquet, who uses Pirellis, and that's on his 43rd lap. So Berger stopped twice, initially for tyres, and then again with that misfire. Nelson Piquet has been in twice. It's not altogether surprising, because we knew that there was going to be one pit stop at least, and maybe two, and it looks it's going to be two rather than the one, in which case the complexion of the race could still change. Lap 44, Patrese, the winner of the Grand Prix in Mexico. And the Williams certainly looking superb. But now that we've got a moment, just cast your minds back to the awful situation for poor Nigel Mansell, coming in the lead, able to make a leisurely tyre stop, and we still don't really know what happened in the pits, but for whatever reason, off comes a rear wheel, and I'm sad to say, but I imagine that must have been a problem that one of the Williams team faced. It might have been the tyre gun, it might have been the nut. Might have just been the pressure of the occasion, but for whatever reason, Nigel Mansell's bad luck, and he's had an awful lot of it in 1991, struck again, and down the race he goes. Not out of the race he goes, as through again goes Riccardo Patrese, completing another lap in the lead, and he's on his 45th lap now in this 71-lap race. Looking good. I think it's awful for poor Riccardo that it was not until very, very late in his career that he got to drive for a winning team, the Williams team, because Riccardo in his career has driven for Arrows and for Alfa Romeo and for Brabham and now for Williams, and in none of those other teams was he ever able to show how good he was. Indeed, he got a pretty bad reputation, which he very rapidly put right when he got the opportunity to win.
Yes, but Murray, to be fair to him, the Williams was a winning car last year and a winning car the year before, and he was not winning in it. This is a new and different Riccardo Patrese we've seen in some of the races this year. We have also seen the old Riccardo Patrese. So my question is, we've always known he's had ability. What has he been doing all these years? I don't think with poor Riccardo, I think the blame has to be laid right at his feet. If he didn't want to try, that's his problem, is the way I would say it.
Well, I suppose the answer to your question is the best he can. And he's leading now on lap 45 from Ayrton Senna by 12.5 seconds. And it wasn't good enough, you're going to say.
No, and I was going to say, and having said that, he's doing a great job today. And in the good races he's had this year, he has been terrific. So I certainly don't want to take that away from him. But we do want to know what he's been doing in the others.
Right, well, here is Jean Alesi, the mercurial French Sicilian. And he's had his moments, his wild moments in the Ferrari. We need to remember that Alesi is pretty new in Grand Prix racing, and it's his first season with Ferrari. Indeed, this is only his 36th Grand Prix, and he's cutting through the end of the field men. And you can see ahead of him now, I think it must be Mark Blundell, and certainly a Brabham Yamaha. No, it's Martin Brundle. I can just see there his white helmet, Martin Brundle, and Brundle in the Brabham Yamaha is well down the field, but he's about to be taken by the Ferrari of Jean Alesi. Brundle is 17th.
And that's Schumacher back in the pit for more tyres. Pirelli's having a bit of trouble, and that was rather a good picture we had from Alesi's car. Pity we couldn't stay with it because there's nothing much happening of importance in the race now, and we're back with it again. Good. Around now, except to say that Nigel Mansell has got his gap to Senna just under a minute, but not making rapid progress there, obviously. However, he is some 10 seconds away from the points. He's in 8th place. In fact, Schumacher, I think, was in front of him, so Schumacher into the pits. He's now in 7th place, and De Cesaris is some roughly 10 seconds ahead of him.
And Mansell's objective must be to reduce the increasing gap in World Championship points between himself and Ayrton Senna, who is second, to as small a one as possible. And when he gets into the points, he will be in a strong position to do that. And ahead of him, the next target for Nigel Mansell, who's now 7th, will be Andrea De Cesaris, and Mansell is about 9 seconds behind the Italian in the Jordan. As you watch Jean Alesi siding his way through the field, he's in 3rd position.
And Gianni Morbidelli jumped Gugelmin there as he followed Alesi through on the lapping. That was good driving from Morbidelli, and those two have been battling it out. De Cesaris in the pit, and that looks to me as if Nigel Mansell moves up into the points, so that should move Mansell into 6th place.
And that was a poor, for whatever reason, pit stop for Andrea De Cesaris, 22 seconds. So the race is back on again from Nigel Mansell's point of view as you watch Brundle being caught. This is a replay by Jean Alesi. Alesi goes through. There is Pierluigi Martini actually in the Minardi behind him. and they were battling for third position, so it's a very, very close thing. This is why we're looking at the Ferrari and the Minardi, and behind them, of course, Ivan Capelli, so third, fourth and fifth together. 28 is Jean Alesi in the Ferrari, 23 in the yellow helmet is Pierluigi Martini, and number 16 is Ivan Capelli, who is in the points again. Capelli has had a dreadful 1990 and 91, except the Hungarian Grand Prix, where his first finish was in the points in 6th place. And Nigel Mansell is now in 6th position, and he is 16 points behind Capelli and catching him.
He certainly is, and Murray, thank you very much for putting me right on Martini and Capelli there. I really stole your line there. I murrayed that one, but thank you very much. Anyway, I now understand what's going on, thank goodness. Martini and Capelli, and as you rightly say, Mansell in hot pursuit and well within sight of the pair of them.
And Ayrton Senna still in second position. I am not ignoring the leader, Riccardo Patrese, who's driving a superlative race, but each of these 16 races are an element in the World Championship, and that is what most of the interest is concentrated on at the present moment. So Ayrton Senna on a potential 6 points as you watch Alesi behind Michele Alboreto, who is in 16th position in the footwork with the Brian Hart V8 engine, and you can see how close the Minardi Ferrari of, there he is, Pierluigi Martini, is to the Ferrari. They're both Ferrari powered, but the Minardi and the Minardi team are in pretty desperate financial straits. They need very much the success that Martini is having at the moment, and for him to stay there until the end of the race to generate sponsorship. Now, there is Alesi, and you're looking at him passing, from his point of view, Michele Alboreto, and lapping the veteran Italian ex-Ferrari driver. There's Martini.
Yes, and Martini, who is a pretty gutsy little driver and a pretty quick one, seems to be producing even more than usual today, and that may well be the rumours of vacancies at Ferrari, and that has a pretty electrifying effect on any Italian driver.
Now here's a prophecy, prove me wrong. Nigel Mansell can finish in third position in this race. He's on lap 50 at the moment. There are 21 laps to go, and in front of him, very close to each other, are Alesi third, Martini fourth, Capelli fifth, and Mansell is about 14 seconds behind Capelli and gaining. So once he catches the Italian in the Leighton House, he will also have caught Martini, who is fourth, and Alesi, who is third.
Murray, I'm afraid you won't get a bet on with that. I think Ladbrokes closed the book on him finishing third a long time ago. He is a red-hot favourite for that one. I certainly wouldn't be taking a bet against it. In fact, I think if all goes well, the thing that Mansell could do is finish higher than that if one of the two leaders drops out. Certainly he's in easy striking distance of those three, or that pair rather, and Alesi ahead of them, and quite honestly, the superiority of the Williams-Renault will certainly make it not unduly difficult for him to deal with those three and make the pass. In the meantime, Senna is tracking Patrese. He's holding him. The gap has slowly, gently eased out. It's now 13 seconds and a tiny bit. But Senna won't be unduly worried about that. I should think he's had a feel. He's tested the temperature of the water, had a go to see if he could catch Patrese. I dare say he's decided that he hasn't, or put it like this, in order to do so, he would have to compromise his chances of finishing the race. And maybe we've got a black flag here. Now, here is a black flag. What we need to see is the number of the car, number 5, and that is Mansell being black flagged, and I hate to think that that might be for being pushed in the pit lane. And if that is the case, first of all, I think on a technicality that is a bad rule, because they should let him finish the race and sort it out afterwards. And, well, we'll try and find out as fast as we can what the reason is for that black flag for Mansell, but whatever it is, I'm sure the Williams team, but there is Frank Williams, looking decidedly unhappy, and who can blame him? It may be a stop-go penalty for Mansell, but I should think the Williams team manager is down there as fast as he can, discussing it with the FISA officials.
The Williams team manager being Peter Windsor. And of course, it was here that Nigel Mansell had that memorable black flag in the Ferrari for reversing in the pit lane, and he claimed not to have seen it. It's very, very easy, of course, to miss a flag when you are exiting a corner at 160 miles an hour, fighting for places, but this would compound poor Nigel's misfortune if it was for being pushed backwards in the pit lane, and we really are guessing, but I can't think what else it would have been. And if it was a marshal pushing him and Mansell gesticulating, and I saw him gesticulating, the marshal not to do it, which calls for a lot of perceptive thinking from a man who's under pressure in the cockpit, having just had an off. Oh, here he is, Mansell coming in, and I fear that Mansell must have given up now. This is a very, very sad ending to a superb drive. Because, yeah, Nigel Mansell retires from the Portuguese Grand Prix on lap 52. And who knows whether there was anything wrong with the car. There was no sign of it.
No, I think that was the response to the black flag, and that really would be a very sad end to Mansell's chase for the championship, and I believe to be a very unfair one as well, if the case was that him being pushed backwards on the pit lane by an official over whom he had no control, and that Mansell did make his best endeavours immediately he's realised what was happening to stop that. And if that's the case, it's, in my book, wrong. And also, if Senna who we look at now, if Senna can continue in second place, he'll have a lead of 24 points in the Drivers' Championship over Nigel Mansell, which with 3 races to go is getting into the realm of a mathematical possibility only. It's not totally impossible, but it means that Mansell's got to start winning. He's got to win basically the last 3 races, and Senna's got to have disasters all the way.
Yes, poor Nigel. Every time he climbs the mountain and starts to make progress, he falls off the rock face. He won in Italy, but only closed the gap between himself and Senna by 4 points, with the Brazilian in second place. And now on lap 53 out of 71 in Portugal, it's Riccardo Patrese in the Williams Renault leading Ayrton Senna by 17 points as we ride with Alesi, who is still in third position. He's pulled away a bit from Pierluigi Martini, who was fourth. Capelli is just 3 seconds behind him in fifth place. There is Alesi crossing the line now. Up into sixth position comes Nelson Piquet. To seventh position comes Michael Schumacher in the Benetton, who might well finish in the points for the second Grand Prix in succession, and it's only the third Grand Prix he's driven in. In 8th place it's Mauricio Gugelmin, 10th is Morbidelli, 9th is Morbidelli, 10th is Moreno, 11th is De Cesaris, and 12th is Stefano Modena. But the tension and excitement has subsided a bit, because I really had no doubt in my mind that Mansell was going to finish third in this race, if not even higher, dependent on whether anything happened to Patrese or Senna. Well, that was destined not to be, and I think as he left the garage you saw Nigel gesticulating to Roseanne, his wife, and I suspect that what he was saying is, let's get out of here. His plane will be waiting either to return him to the Isle of Man or take him to his Pine Cliffs Golf Club in Portugal here, which he's associated with, to work off some of the frustration. As through in third position at the end of the 54th lap went Alesi. Fourth there is Pierluigi Martini. And although the...
Yeah, sorry to interrupt you, Mike. I was just thinking of the embarrassment for Ferrari with Martini hounding John Alesi in the works car, the Minardi, of course, having the Ferrari engine, and I'm quite sure that the better Ferrari engine is in Alesi's car, and so that will be an embarrassment chassis-wise. Ferrari would, of course, at this stage claim that all the engines are the same, and Martin has got just as good a one as a Lazy, but they would have to. So the race really now, all the sting and the excitement has really gone out of the race. Senna, of course, still has to finish. The temperature hasn't gone down here, so we talked earlier about the McLaren being pretty marginal, and that, of course, is always made worse by high temperatures. So it's not finished yet, but certainly the excitement as far as wheel-to-wheel racing is concerned has gone. Senna has now eased off quite a lot. He's clearly letting Riccardo Patrese go. He's slowed down his lap times by a couple of seconds and is now nearly 20 seconds adrift, because he can afford to do that because he's got very nearly 40 seconds lead over a Lazy in third place.
Yes, because of the world champion situation, a lot of the attention was understandably on Nigel Mansell, but it enables us, rightly so, to return to Riccardo Patrese. And if he wins, there he is on the left, lapping Michele Alboreto and Martin Brundle. And if Patrese wins this Grand Prix, and he's showing every sign of doing so, it will have been richly deserved, because the Italian was fastest in 3 of the 4 practice sessions for the Portuguese Grand Prix, and of course he took that absolutely scintillating pole position after having walked in from his broken car, half a lap in the heat of yesterday afternoon, and in the last moments of the session got into the spare car, which had been changed over from Nigel Mansell settings to Patrese's, and brilliantly took that pole position.
Yeah, for further down the field, an interesting situation is developing between the two Benetton drivers. We had one of the Benettons in the background there, in that Michael Schumacher, who's made 2 tap stops, I think, to Nelson Piquet's 1. Nelson Piquet, I understand, I'm corrected, has also made 2, and Schumacher is now attacking his illustrious and highly experienced triple world champion teammate Nelson Piquet. And this, of course, he's won 3 world championships, and nice for Schumacher is competing in his 3rd Grand Prix.
Yes, and as a tribute to Schumacher, after the Italian Grand Prix, when Piquet drove against him as a teammate, and Schumacher, of course, beat him 5th position in Italy to Piquet's 6th position, Nelson Piquet said, "This young man drives like Gilles Villeneuve," and I can think of no higher tribute to pay the 22-year-old German than that. And Riccardo Patrese on lap 58 leads in Portugal, with Senna having gone round quicker than him on the previous lap, but Patrese's lead is 18.5 seconds. In 3rd position, it's still a Lacey, who is 2.5 seconds ahead of Pierluigi Martini, and out of the race goes Stefano Modena in the Tyrrell Honda. And I actually had a letter from somebody saying they'd been following the progress of the Irish driver, Stefano Modena, and they discovered to their surprise he was Italian. I assure you he is Italian, and I assure you that he is out of the race, and that was on lap 58.
That's the green on the helmet that confused them, obviously. An understandable error.
See it your way, David. So Patrese leads, and hopefully from Patrese's and Williams' point of view, he's just got to reel off the laps in a reliable car, because Ayrton Senna is not going to make any effort to close with and take and pass Patrese, and thereby increase the mechanical loads on his McLaren Honda and risk retirement, when he has a certain 6 points in the bag, which will increase his World Championship lead over Nigel Mansell from 18 points to 24 points, as Patrese dives through on the inside of Michele Alboreto's footwork car. And another one of the hot rumours here, incidentally, is that Footwork next year are going to have the Honda V10 engine, and Aguri Suzuki, the Japanese driver, driving for them. And that would mean, of course, that the Footwork team would have dropped the Porsche Formula One engine, which, to put it mildly, has not been a conspicuous success in Grand Prix racing this year. Lap 59, Patrese, Senna, Alesi, Martini in 4th position. In 5th position, it's still Ivan Capelli in the points, one place higher than his sole previous finish this year.
And Schumacher still chasing his teammate Nelson Piquet, still a gap of some 7 seconds, but he is closing it slowly, gently, and it'll be interesting to see that if he can get onto Piquet's tail, how much respect he's going to show for his team leader. I'm sure there won't be any orders from the Benetton team to respect Nelson Piquet's record, because Schumacher is their man of the future, and it seems that Nelson Piquet, his services are not being required again next year by the Benetton team, and I have to say that that feeling, I believe, is mutual.
Yeah, here's a piece of useless information for you. The oldest and the youngest drivers in the Portuguese Grand Prix are Nelson Piquet, who is 6th, and Michael, and he's 38 years old, and Michael Schumacher, who is 22 years old and is in 7th place. And incidentally, Piquet's had a birthday, he's 39 now, so 17 years between them.
So he's overtaken Mansell, because he used to be younger than Mansell.
Yes, you have me there, James. But we'll check on that. But Piquet crosses the line in 6th position. Now, here he is. Nelson Piquet, what a fantastic career this man has had. He's driven for a lot of Grand Prix teams. He started his Grand Prix career with Mo Nunn's Ensign team. Then he had a race in a McLaren, and 7 years with Brabham with Gordon Murray. That wonderful partnership between driver and designer. Before, Nelson had a couple of years with the Williams team, world champion in 1987. 2 years with Lotus, now into his 2nd year with the Benetton team. And we're riding with him now. He is in 6th position. The gap between him and Michael Schumacher is 8.5 seconds. 7th position, Schumacher. 8th is Gutermin. 9th De Cesaris. 10th Morbidelli. 11th is Moreno. And in 12th position is Eric Comas. Martin Brundle, by the way, in the sole remaining Brabham Yamaha, is in 13th place. Brabham, who are losing their Yamaha engines next year to the Jordan team and will be using Judd V10s. But it's Patrese, and it's a 71 lap race, and Patrese is on lap 61 at the present moment.
Yes, and the battle for 3rd place has spread out a little bit, in that Alesi's got some just 3.5, nearly 4 seconds over Martini, and they've dropped Capelli a bit, who's now some 12 seconds behind that battle.
Yes, and if the race has become a bit static with 10 laps to go, as you see from the Portuguese caption there, there was a puff of dust in the background there, and I couldn't identify who it was because it just caught my eyes. I was watching Senna go into turn 1. You must not forget, if the race has become a bit static, that nevertheless the pressure is on all the drivers in this extreme heat, with the knowledge that we've had a good few retirements, including, of course, Modena, Mansell, Prost, Gerhard Berger, some of the top men in the Portuguese Grand Prix. But as ever, the incredible Ayrton Senna there seems to have a charmed life. He had 2 notable failures this year, which are none of his making. They were the Honda technicians making when he ran out of petrol for 2 races in succession in Britain and Germany, apart from which he would have had even more points. But then you could say the same thing about Nigel Mansell. And I think if Mansell and Senna could have changed their bad luck, Mansell would have been leading the World Championship. But there's no such thing as if in motor racing. It's what actually happens that matters. And Senna is now completing his 62nd lap, 19.5 seconds behind Riccardo Patrese in the leading car, the Williams Renault. So it is looking like being a very comfortable victory for the Italian, Riccardo Patrese, and that would be his 5th Grand Prix win in his 221 races. Now, we've actually had a message. I paused there to tell you that we've had a message from the Williams pit. And they say that they could only think that Nigel Mansell was black flagged for working on the car in the pit lane as opposed to the patch of the pit lane opposite his own garage. And I've also been told that Mansell is desperately disappointed. Well, that would be no surprise to anybody because... Oh, hello, there's a flash of flame there from the Leighton house. That looked like Capelli in trouble.
Yes, that was most extraordinary because it appeared to come from the front of the car. I think something's collapsed on the suspension at the front, as opposed, yes, front suspension, the tum is rubbing on the ground. I think, is it not? Or was that a blow-up? Difficult. Yes, and the nose, no, the nose. The nose is off the car, so the nose has become detached from its mounting. That is running on the ground. He may well be able to get it round to the garage and change the nose, but of course Capelli will be out of the points as a result of having to do a very slow lap. Yes, the nose, oh, there it goes, bye-bye. Can he get it back? And if he can't get out of that gravel pit, well, he can still finish the race like that. But as I say, it will be fairly academic for him because he was no way, I think, he can finish in the points down.
Yes, poor Ivan. He's said to be leaving the Leighton House team, who's going through very hard times at the moment anyway, at the end of this season, to join the Dallara team. Here's a replay. Capelli, is, you see the nose swivelling off the car. Fortunately, goes off the course as well, as did Capelli, but he immediately recovered and managed to keep going through the gravel. Souvenir there. And Riccardo Patrese laps Mika Hakkinen, and behind him is Nelson Piquet, who is now in 5th position, but Piquet, don't get excited, is a lap behind Riccardo Patrese, who has lapped everybody up to Pierluigi Martini, who is in 4th place, 7 seconds behind Alesi 3rd, who is some 50 seconds behind Ayrton Senna. So the race seems to be over, bar the shouting. We've said that many times in the past, only for something incredibly dramatic to happen. But Patrese is leading on lap 65 out of 71, with Senna seemingly on his way to a potential World Championship winning further 6-pointers. Into the pit comes Capelli. Now for a new nose.
And you can see just how long it took him to get round with, without the benefit of the front wings. And these cars really become very unbalanced when they're missing some of their aerodynamic appendages. So in the meantime, Nelson Piquet is fending off the challenge from Michael Schumacher most effectively. They're up to 5th and 6th places, and he's managed to keep the gap out at just over 8 seconds. And that has been the case this weekend. Piquet has been able to keep a marginal upper hand over the man he undoubtedly would see as a young upstart within the team, and is succeeding in doing that now. Patrese slowed down to a comfortable speed, lapping well within himself, as is Senna behind him. Senna can respond and go quicker, and all that will do is make Patrese up his pace, and they've got a lot of space all the way back to Alesi in 3rd.
Capelli exits the pits, so presumably there wasn't anything wrong with his suspension, because you'd hardly put a new nose on and go out with a broken suspension, and he's fairly shot out of the pits. But a tribute now to Michael Schumacher in the points. It's his 3rd Grand Prix. You will remember that in Belgium he started 7th on the grid in the Jordan and was up to 5th at the first corner before his clutch burnt out as a result of an over-enthusiastic start. Then the last Grand Prix 2 weeks ago in Italy, in only his 2nd race he finishes in 5th position. Here today in Portugal, in only his 3rd Grand Prix in 2 makes of car, he is in 6th place. I don't know how that works out in motor racing records, but there are very few drivers who will have finished in the World Championship points in the 2nd and 3rd of their first 3 races, never mind in 2 separate cars. And here's the amazing, I use the word advisedly, Riccardo Patrese, because the two drivers who had the longest driving record in Grand Prix racing before Riccardo Patrese were Graham Hill and Jacques Lafitte, both of whom had driven in 176 Grand Prix, and I don't mean this unkindly, but both were past their sell-by date when they were into the closing stages of their career. But Riccardo Patrese, who has long since passed the 176 Grand Prix mark, and indeed is now in his 221st, has got better and better, and looks as though he's going to win his 221st Grand Prix here at Monaco, and Nelson Piquet starting to give him a hard time. Patrese won't be bothered. That's Capelli. All is not well, despite the new nose, and the Italian is coming in to join the other retirements. Modena, Mansell, Prost, Berger, Pirro, Leto, Mark Blundell, Johnny Herbert. And as I talk to you now, there are 17 drivers still left in the race. Nigel Mansell has at the moment the consolation, and it'll be a very poor one, of having created the fastest lap in the Portuguese Grand Prix when he went round on lap 36, 1:18.179.
Yes, and I think the ease with which Patrese is taking things at the moment is demonstrated there by Piquet starting to press him to unlap himself. And Piquet, of course, is in a hurry because Schumacher has closed that gap now to 6.5 seconds and is lapping pretty quickly. So Piquet will not want Patrese to get in his way. He'll be very keen that Patrese understands the situation and gives him some space.
That's Piquet we're with now. You can see Riccardo Patrese's Williams Renault in front of our Benetton Ford, the HB Ford V8 engine, the successor to the fabled DFR, which won 155 Grand Prix. And it's a very bumpy circuit here in Portugal. You can see that as Patrese bumps his way down the start with over the start and finish straight with 3 laps to go. He's on his 69th lap now. Now, I was hoping that we would be able to see how far Schumacher was behind Piquet as the Brazilian unlaps himself from an untroubled and unruffled Riccardo Patrese. Maybe we'll see it as they come into the start and finish straight at the end of their 69th lap. The gap between Piquet in 5th place and Schumacher in 6th place is a mere 6 seconds. Patrese leads, Senna 20 seconds behind second, and Lacey looks as though he's going to finish third, in which case it would be Williams, McLaren, and there goes on replay Nelson Piquet passing race leader Riccardo Patrese and lapping himself. So Alesi third, Pierluigi Martini has dropped back in 4th position. Piquet is 5th, being caught by Schumacher, both of whom have been lapped by Patrese. 7th is Maurizio Gugelmin in the other Leighton House, which is in the running. Pity, because they would both have been well up at the end of the race. Andrea de Cesaris is 9th, 8th, Morbidelli is 9th, Moreno is 10th, Comas is 11th, Martin Brundle is 12th, 2 laps down, ahead of Nakajima and Capelli.
And there we had just had a glimpse of Schumacher in the background, and he is now under 5 seconds behind Nelson Piquet. And he's certainly charging because Schumacher has just put up his fastest lap of the race so far. Now he will want to unlap himself past Patrese, and it'll be interesting to see. I wouldn't mind having a little bet that Patrese will let him pass pretty smartish, right? Because he'll be amused to see Schumacher chasing Piquet, and he'll want to sit back and watch. I mean, drivers do have time in a race like this, particularly in the luxurious positions. Piquet gets in a lot of traffic, and that won't please him. That in Patrese's position, he's well in front. He needs things to amuse himself. As Schumacher really hounds up to Patrese. Now, will Patrese let him go? And that was just really... Oh, I see what you mean, yes. And the back markers are working so hard amongst themselves that Piquet's being badly held up there. And that makes for what may well be a grandstand finish between the two Benetton drivers.
Indeed, as you watch Mika Häkkinen still going strong to complete another Grand Prix. He's in 14th place, and Riccardo Patrese passes Satoru Nakajima. He has still not, Patrese, been passed by Michael Schumacher, but Riccardo Patrese in his, I say again, 221st Grand Prix has been unlapped by Michael Schumacher, who I don't think is going to take that place from Nelson Piquet. And Patrese is on his 71st and last lap, almost home for his 5th Grand Prix win in his long career, and his 2nd Grand Prix win of 1991. And it will, as I said earlier, have been more than richly deserved after a superb 2 days of practicing on Friday and Saturday and a quite magnificent pole position. But there's going to be no chance, I think, unless Piquet has trouble of Schumacher catching him, passing him, because as soon as Riccardo Patrese crosses the line and takes the checkered flag, the positions will be frozen, and Piquet and Schumacher will be adjudged to have finished in their places 1 lap adrift. And Patrese is almost home now. There is Ayrton Senna in 2nd position. And Riccardo Patrese enters the start and finish straight and crosses the line to win the Portuguese Grand Prix, to the exultation of the Williams team and his own sheer delight. He's going past the grandstand now. I can see him waving his hand in acclamation out of the cockpit, having won in Portugal from Ayrton Senna.
Yes, and of course the Benettons, having unlapped themselves, get another lap. There is Ayrton Senna coming through for 2nd place, and really puts himself well in the driving seat as far as the World Championship is concerned. The chances for Mansell are getting, as I said earlier, pretty much into the realm of the mathematical. And I have here in front of me the official press release from the FIA that says, and I quote, "For Mansell, disqualified. Technical assistance received outside his box." So that means working on the car, not in its official pit. And that really is a cruel, cruel way for Mansell's chances to be effectively, I feel, gone. It's not impossible, because stranger things have happened. This is a strange business. We get runs of luck and runs of bad luck. And Mansell certainly has the capability to score 24 or more points in order to win the championship. However, he would have to do that. Senna would have to break down in all the last 3 races, but stranger things have happened. No, Patrese on his slowing down lap, what turned out to be a very easy win, as wins in the Williams Renaults have been this year by and large. The car is certainly the best in the business at the moment. The Renault engine is as good as any, and the Williams chassis is definitely the state of the art. And a high finish there for Ferrari, lazy in 3rd place. Tremendous race by Pierluigi Martini, and very encouraging for the Minardi team. And then some way behind him was Nelson Piquet, and the 2 Benettons with Schumacher following him home and giving him a hard race towards the end, a real chase at the end. And Schumacher continues to impress, not just with his speed and talent, but with his general poise out of the car.
Well done indeed, Riccardo Patrese. He really, really did deserve that one, as did Nigel Mansell, but it was not to be. And so now in the World Championship, Ayrton Senna leads Nigel Mansell by 24 points, and as James has said, that is a mighty mountain to climb. Riccardo Patrese has moved 10 points closer to Nigel Mansell. He's in 3rd position, with Gerhard Berger in 4th place. Nelson Piquet has actually effectively moved back again past Alain Prost to 5th position, although they've got the same number of points. Piquet has the advantage of a race victory, and Alain Prost has still not won a Grand Prix in 1991, and he's won one every year since 1981. But Williams are a bit closer in the Constructors' Championship. They started off this race 15 points behind McLaren. They're now 11 points behind, and the Constructors' Championship is very much down to those 2. because Ferrari are so far behind in third place.
Yes, and back to the Drivers' Championship, and I know these remarks will be of no consolation whatsoever to Nigel Mansell, but I really do feel that we've seen this year in adversity in terms of the competitive state, or rather relatively uncompetitive state of his car. I think we've seen really the best of Ayrton Senna, and he has taken the McLaren, which has struggled to compete and is not nearly as good a car this year as the Williams Renault, has really brought the best out of him, both in terms of finishing, in tactics and in pure speed, and I don't think there's any other driver in the business who could be leading the championship now in any other car than a Williams, and that's a great tribute to Senna. And as I say, I think his experience has finally reached its full maturity. His motivation is still 100%, and he really is proving to be a great champion, and he's now within spitting distance of yet another World Championship.
Record lap to Nigel Mansell by some 0.2 of a second, not much, but it is a new record. And victory in Portugal to Riccardo Patrese from Ayrton Senna by 21 seconds. Alesi third, Martini fourth, Piquet fifth, and Schumacher a magnificent sixth. And we go on to Spain for the Spanish Grand Prix at Barcelona in 1 week's time.
Fazem a festa, apesar de Ayrton Senna não ter ganho a corrida, ele fez de facto aqui uma excelente operação em termos de campeonato. E enquanto não aparecem no pódio os três primeiros, vamos para a classificação final. Riccardo Patrese foi o primeiro, Senna segundo, Alesi terceiro, quarto Pierluigi Martini, quinto Nelson Piquet, sexto Michael Schumacher, sétimo Maurício Gugelmin, oitavo Andrea de Césares, nono Gianni Morbidelli e décimo Roberto Moreno. Aqui vêm os primeiros. 11º Eric Comas, 12º Brandl, 13º Nakajima, 14º Hakkinen, 15º Alboreto e 16º Thierry Boutsen. Riccardo Patrese é o vencedor, Jean Alesi também ali vem.
Difícil trazer até ao pódio
Ricardo!
os três primeiros classificados.
Ricardo ainda está junto da sala de imprensa.
E assim que eles chegarem ao pódio, vamos ouvir o hino do piloto.
Não é fácil, de facto, chegar aqui.
Não é, pois não, Zé Pinto?
Não, de modo algum. Muito satisfeito.
Ele devia ter ido por outro lado.
Eu penso que sim. A Senna já está à entrada do pódio. Ricardo entra agora. Ayrton Senna e o Jean Alesi.
O hino italiano. Seguir-se-á com certeza o hino britânico.
Agora o ministro Roberto Carneiro entrega o troféu ao piloto vencedor.
O ministro Roberto Carneiro entregando o troféu a Riccardo Patrese. Um troféu bastante bonito, bem diferente daqueles que são habitualmente entregues ao vencedor.
Todo em cristal, é bem bonito.
Esperemos que não aconteça o mesmo que aconteceu só há 2 anos, em que se partiu. César Torres entrega o troféu a Ayrton Senna.
E Jean Alesi.
E a Jean Alesi.
Bom, e agora é o banho.
Agora vai ser o banho, vai. Normalmente aqui o banho é para os fotógrafos.
Eles estão muito longe aqui no Grande Prémio de Portugal. Eles estão do lado lá do outro muro. E, portanto é difícil o champanhe lá chegar.
E agora Senna banha Patrese. Três pilotos que se dão bastante bem: Ricardo Patrese, Jean Alesi e Ayrton Senna. E é o final da cerimónia do pódio. Senhores espectadores da RTP, esperamos que a nossa reportagem vos tenha chegado em boas condições de imagem e som. Pela nossa parte é tudo. Muito